Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. All right. Hey, good to see everybody. For those who've been listening for a long time, Jonathan Foster has been a guest on Spirituality Adventures several times. I think this may be the third or fourth time I've had him on.
It's out of control.
Yeah. So we had him on for Indigo, The Color of Grief. We also had him on for his doctoral dissertation that he finished a few years ago called Theology of Consent. Theology of Consent. And he tackles Rene Girard. Did I come close to the right pronunciation?
No, that's very
Girard,
good. Yes. Or Girard tackles me.
His mimetic theory and how that really ties into our topic today to some degree, which is atonement theories. And
look at that book. That's
Jonathan is starting. Yeah, for those of you who are viewing on YouTube, he's starting a theology micro series. This is the first one. This title is At-One-Ment. So, breaking up the word atonement into a concept that can kind of tie into the atonement. Just breaking it up, At-One-Ment. So, the first thing I want to do, though, is talk about your lens of how the new lens from which you look at atonement theory. What is your lens?
Yeah, well, thanks, Fred, for having me back on. It's always good to hang out with you. Appreciate the invite. And yeah, the lens is what I hope to look through when I read anything that has to do with scripture or think about theology, or for that matter, anything in life. And that is a lens of love. I think we all have lenses. So I'm trying to be intellectually honest with that. I've had people tell me, you've probably had this too, but I've had people tell me like, well, you just want to see what you're looking for. And I'm like, yeah, I actually do. I really do want to see love, and I'm okay with admitting that. And I think other people want to see other things that aren't love. So I feel the invitation to try to do that. The lens is made up by all kinds of things, your context, your socioeconomic standing, your language, how old you are, your race, your mental aptitude, your personality, birth order, trauma, all kinds of things, experiences you've been through in life. And I just keep doing my best. Whatever else is going on, I may get wrong, but I am doing my best to try to shape and reshape this lens of love, because I think that's the depth of everything that's going on and ultimately the hope of the world. So I'm trying to encourage people to read the text, the biblical text, through a lens of love.
Yes. Excellent. So you've got a working definition of love here. And I want to, because we could spend the whole interview on that alone, but let's pare that down to about 5 minutes.
Okay. All right.
And because I want to definitely leave time to talk about bad theories of atonement, or at least theories that we don't like too much, and then maybe some better theories of atonement, hopefully. Yeah.
Sure. Well, so
definition of love.
Right. So it's one thing to say, hey, I'm trying to read through a lens of love, and it's a whole other thing to decide what your idea of love is. And so in many ways, my work over the last few years has been trying to vet, different approaches. And it's been influenced, as I say in the introduction to At-One-Ment and the other micro theology series books. It's been influenced by open and relational theology and mimetic theory and by the things I've gone through in life, which at this stage are, there's been quite a few of these things.
Mm.
But my working definition right now is that love is an uncontrolling, non binary, non violent, non scapegoating energy in relationship with God and everyone that's meant for the non complete flourishing of everything in the world. That's the definition.
Yeah. So that's,
So, what does that mean?
yeah, like uncontrolling, non binary, non violent, non scapegoating energy for everyone. And I'm assuming everything.
That's right. Everything is
And, and then non complete flourishing.
meant for the non complete flourishing of everyone and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So, each of those
oh,
uncontrolling is what it sounds like. I don't think love controls. I think if something controls, you can't call it love. Non binary means this thing can't be slotted into one thing that's pitted against another thing. It's it's amorphous in that way. It's synergistic. Non-violent is again what it sounds like. And I'm trying to approach life through this lens of love, and I don't think violence is our best move. Non-scapegoating taps into the Rene Girard stuff. It is, I think, scapegoating is the way I think humans have ordered our culture. It's built around sacrifice. The sacrifice is a scapegoat. I want to get away from that. Love is an energy. God is love. That's what the Bible says. But I don't think it's exactly correct to say that love is God. To flip it around, you might be able to, but that's probably for a whole nother podcast. But the point here is, I think love is a kind of relational energy that's always at play. It's meant, and it's between God and everyone. So I'm never thinking in terms of the divine being separate. There is to borrow Ilya Delio's language, divine entanglement is just the reality. It's always happening,
mhm.
and it's meant for the non-complete flourishing. And this is the part that I usually wind up spending more time talking about. But so I absolutely believe it's meant for flourishing. Flourishing to me has to do with love. Love doesn't have to pull one thing down in order to build another thing up. It's genuinely interested and it genuinely has ways for everything to flourish. I don't, by the way. My imagination is stunted and limited that way, but I think love is. So I think it wants flourishing. However, I add this little non-complete clause to it because I want to hesitate for a moment because Americanized Christianity, not just Americanized Christianity, American in general, capitalism and any other kind of ideology we might talk about, loves to make us think, wants us to think that if we can just get that thing and get filled, become complete, become whole. I mean, this is what consumerism is all about. This is why the mall is like, or the shopping areas are like the modern day temples. You go there with this idea of like, if you just buy something, get something, you'll get filled. And we have superimposed that whole idea into our religion and even into our Christianity. And we've taught people that there's a God shaped hole. And essentially, I am watering it down, but this is the way that it's often communicated. God shaped hole. So you got to get God inside you. Once that happens, you're good to go. And nothing else really matters. And now you are fulfilled. And well, any and all of us who have tried that know there's a measure of truth there, but that doesn't exactly work like that. For one thing, desire itself, I think, and I'm not saying everyone agrees with this, but I think desire itself is built on the idea that you're never fully complete. You're never quite there. And with love itself, love comes packaged with risk, which means love itself has some holes in it. So I talk a lot about, and this phrase is not um, novel to me. I don't know who first said it, but I talk a lot about the hole inside the hole. So the HOLE inside the WHOLE that always exists. it doesn't make you bad, doesn't make you wrong. But the point isn't that God isn't trying to fix that, make you complete. So you're now some static, purified thing. But there's always this kind of movement. So I'm playing with that. I don't know if it's the best language yet, but that's what non-complete flourishing means.
Mm.
And then the last part, I think, yes, like you said, it's meant for everyone, everything from the atom to the ant to the Andromeda galaxy, the gluon gopher and galaxy. I don't know, the alliterations. So that's my working definition of love.
And all those parallel universes out there too, they just,
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe.
So, yeah, I was curious the non-complete flourishing. I wasn't a Nazarene, but certainly read a lot of Wesley along the way. And I remember reading his little book on perfection.
Yeah.
I can't remember the title of it, but it
Me
had
neither.
perfection in the title.
Right. Right.
But it was really about love. What
Right.
was interesting when I got in and started reading it, it wasn't about a static perfection as
It's
much as
interesting with the
a
Nazarenes.
movement of love, right? And with your
Right.
background, I just thought that was an interesting thing to throw in there, non-complete flourishing.
Well,
I was
it
wondering how
definitely
that
plays
plays
in.
off with your background with perfectionism in the Nazarene world.
With the Church of the Nazarene, and this is true with a few other traditions as well, but certainly with my background, and of course, I'm no longer with the Nazarenes. They uninvited me from the tribe a few years ago, but bless their hearts. But there is kind of two camps. There's what's called the Wesleyan camp, and then there's the American Holiness. And American Holiness is more of the camp meeting, like the revivals, the tent meetings, in more experiential, um, this thing that kind of swept across the country. And I'm not suggesting it's all bad or it was all, there was good intentions and there was probably some good things that happened out of it. But those two camps definitely veer in the sense that, yes, what you're pointing out, a more Wesleyan idea is that this thing is not static and be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect begs questions like what does perfection mean? The
Mhm.
American Holiness group would say essentially, and I'm dumbing it down to to be brief, but essentially that you get filled with the Spirit, now you're perfected, and in its most rigid forms, they even said, I mean, I heard this preached by certain people that you now no longer you're not going to sin once you become saved and then sanctified. That's
Yeah.
that perfection piece. It's possible that you're not sinning any longer.
Yeah,
So,
I met a dude that was
yeah.
a elder in the Nazarene church, told me he hadn't sinned for, I don't know, 20 some years. And I was like, can I
And until he told you that he hadn't sinned in 20 years, and then at
well, I
that
was like
moment he
going,
did.
are you married? Like, can I interview your wife on there? Just curious.
Yeah, highly problematic. So perfection for me is, that was something on my journey that I had to disassemble
Hmm.
and reassemble. And you're right. That all probably plays into my wrestling with
Yeah.
non-complete flourishing.
I liked, you described if I read it right, you described some of the deconstruction factors in your life as inciting incidents.
Hmm.
Deconstruction really, we wrestle with that word because it can mean different things, but it's still packs a lot of punch in it. I think, doesn't it? That word deconstruction, inciting incidents. Like these are things that influenced your lens as well, not just the lens of love, but or maybe those things drew you to a lens of love. Those inciting incidences.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of
It's like,
putting
how
it.
do you survive all this? Well, you let's do it through love. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so inciting incident is a phrase that comes from the literature world. When you write things, you have to write, especially if you're writing fiction or the shows that we talked about
Yeah,
earlier. Um, each scene has an inciting incident, has an incident that happens that incites tension, and the all of us have those in our lives. And I've had lots of them, and I categorize three different types. that then wind up influencing my lens. And the one is just that I started meeting people different than my tradition. I grew up in the Church of the Nazarene, and they basically led me to believe that, as a pastor, I'm supposed to be making people who are saved, sanctified, not sinning, and it looks like this very particular kind of way.
Mm.
Especially church planting, like you're all of a sudden you're out meeting all the pagans in the world, and a lot of these pagans were like, and heathens. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. They were really good people, and I started seeing intentionality and thoughtfulness and graciousness more abundant in some of their lives than in the people that were supposed to fit in that box. And that was an inciting incident. It made me rethink.
Mm.
The second thing is just my interaction with the sacred text, the Bible.
Mm.
I mean, if you have intellectual honesty, at some point you you have to recognize
Mm.
there's some scientific problems, there's some archaeological problems, there's some um, historical problems in terms of even the way things are written in one part of scripture, the same story is repeated in other places and details are changed. That should cause you to ask questions. There's translation and language problems. All of those things serve to be inciting incidents because when you start to add those things up, that is no small thing for people like you and I. Certainly, my tradition growing up, we didn't believe the Bible was, I wasn't taught that the Bible was perfect, but wow, pretty close to it. So that was a second piece. And then the third inciting incident for me was just the amount of loss that I've been through in life. I mean, death is shaped and reshaped, and it never, ever stops. And the most intense, probably, is my daughter who died when she was 20. And we've talked about that before. That that's invited me, caused me, forced me to really have to wrestle with what I think of all these things. So yeah, I'm trying to be honest about all that and say, look, right up front, I'm showing you the homework. These things have influenced me. These things are big, dramatic things in my life. They continue to influence me, and I want to be honest about them. And if you don't want to be honest about them in your life, that's fine, but we'll probably come to different conclusions about our theology if you don't.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's the Yeah, when you grow up evangelical, you think there's this one pure way to arrive at what the Bible says.
Hmm.
God said it, I believe it, that settles it, kind of a thing. And
Hmm.
it's very, and then you're right or you're wrong about how you handle the sacred text. So, and then it fails to acknowledge any lenses that they're using. Some of the evangelical lenses and how they view the scriptures are very new in terms of the whole history of Christianity.
That's right.
They're hermeneutical lenses that are imposed on the Bible from the evangelical community that weren't even a part of the way people thought about the Bible for centuries in the Christian tradition. So,
It's so true and
you
it's
know,
so obvious, but hard to
but
see it.
it's not obvious to the average
Mm-mm,
layperson, right? And
mm-mm.
so this gets us into atonement. I mean, we're dealing with some of the very uh, the nexus of some evangelical theologies would place in the atonement theory. Like if you get the atonement theory right, then you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and you're
Mm-hmm.
good to go to heaven, and you're good to lead people to the right truth. But then if you get the atonement theory wrong, you're out. You're bound for hell. And I mean, heaven and hell sometimes lay on the whether you get this right or wrong. And what's fascinating is that, as you point out in the book, is that you highlight several different atonement theories, and then you try to land on one that works with your new lenses of love
Yeah.
and these,
Mm-hmm.
these inciting incidences. Let's talk first, since both of us have probably preached some really bad or things that we would cringe at now. What are some of the worst ways you've preached the cross in your ministry,
Well, I will say, first of all,
or maybe have heard other people do, or ones
yeah,
that you dislike the most right now, or the most cringeworthy, or whatever?
yeah. I will say, first of all, I'm really thankful that um, I was preaching this stuff really before the internet hit. And I'm half joking, but really half serious. Like the pressure that in general, I think puts on young preachers is got to be immense. And I know that when I was younger and not as healthy, not that I'm the paragon of health at this point, but probably psychologically, socially a little bit healthier, certainly theologically healthier. I think the pressure that puts on young people is really probably stressful. And so I'm glad that's true, and I'm glad we don't have recordings, although there might be a CD or two still floating around of I didn't pastor a big church like you did, so there's probably not as many tapes and CDs flying around of my old stuff. But um, yeah, I think that we've all heard stuff that's cringe that you now looking back, you just can't figure out how it's possible that, we thought this was healthy or good or really had the depth of love behind it because so much of it is driven by what I call the myth of redemptive sacrifice, which is really just a Walter Wink phrase that I've kind of co-opted and adapted,
Hmm.
and it has to do with bloodshed. And so anything I heard, and as I think about growing up, that had to do with penal substitutionary atonement, most satisfaction, ransom stuff, although those theories, none of those theories were named, which is also interesting and worthy of some reflection. The PSA, penal substitutionary atonement, essentially encapsulates, I think, all the worst part of atonement stuff. And it was just the air that we breathed. I mean, it wasn't like anyone ever stopped and said, "Oh, this lens we're looking through." It just comes packaged with most kind of middle of the road Americanized evangelicalism, and it's super unfortunate. So it was destabilizing when I started to unwind all of it, to pull at the thread, so to speak, but also really freeing and really like I'm deeply thankful for it.
You know, a book that I read that got me, which you probably will surprise you, but got me rethinking my atonement theories was The Cross of Christ by John R.W. Stott.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever read that one or not.
I don't think I have. I'm
It
familiar
came
with
out
who
over
he is,
20
but
years ago,
okay.
and he does a really, really deep dive uh, from, the words, word studies, theological studies, and all that. But what was fascinating was one of the things that he hammered home was that this is not what happens at the cross, and you can disagree with this or whatever, but it's what got me rethinking some of my really basic, like, four spiritual laws kind of, evangelism explosion, all those little, I was trained in every way to lead people to Christ with every model
Oh
that was
yeah.
out there, the
Oh
Roman
yeah.
road, the four spiritual laws, the, evangelism explosion, all those things. So, but he was big on this is not a three-party transaction. Um, what happens at the cross. In other words, it wasn't like God's really pissed and angry at humanity. He's got to pour out his anger somewhere. So he grabs this innocent dude over here that we happen to call Jesus, his son, and he pours out all his wrath and anger that humanity deserved. This innocent person takes it all, and then we put our faith in that innocent person, and we get forgiven for everything. And he just, even like Russell Bertrand critiqued that type of penal substitutionary atonement theory in his book Why I'm Not a Christian.
Mhm.
And he just John R.W. Stott would actually agree with some of his critique at that point, in that it's like God doesn't have to kill somebody, some innocent party, to, like, if you had a kid and three of your kids turn really bad, and then your really good kid, you're going to punish him for eternity so that your
Right.
other three kids can be forgiven, that kind of thing.
Right.
Even if your good kid volunteered for it, what good loving mom or dad would still inflict that kind of punishment on their good kid to punish their bad kids? The
Well, yeah.
the the,
What does it say about the parent that
the
you need
parent.
to be satiated with
Yeah.
violence or something. It.
So Stott really tackled, he critiqued that heavily, and then his
Interesting.
what he landed on was he still argued for a substitutionary type atonement, but it was God in Christ reconciling the world.
Mm,
And what he said was, and I'm curious how you respond to this, what he said was that a lot of the tension that plays out at the cross is the tension within the heart of God between, like,
mhm,
say, love and justice, and how what we would call a response toward evil. So, like, if you think about anger, does God have anger? And I'm asking you, I want you to respond to them, because Stott would actually argue that there is an appropriate response to evil and injustice
mhm,
that that lights us up a little bit, like you could call it anger, like a righteous anger,
mhm,
and that God has this. The When God's kids hurt each other, it hurts the heart of God, and there's
mhm,
some kind of a moral response to that injustice within the heart of God. And then, but God's love and forgiveness all meet together in the cross, and that obviously God forgives, and he would probably argue for more of a demonstration, or if he'd use transactional language, he would talk about a transaction between God's own heart and humanity, not not like paying some kind of an
sure.
outside thing for to anyway. So it got me rethinking all kinds of things about the atonement when I read that book like 25 years ago. I actually started adjusting my preaching to preach, my favorite verse became God is in Christ reconciling. Now, it
Right.
wasn't God against Christ. It
That's
wasn't
right.
God punishing. It was the heart of God being displayed through Christ. And the heart of God is on full display with forgiveness and love and the crushing blow of injustice, and yet the redemptive nature of death and resurrection and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so I started adjusting my preaching, and I think doing a little better with it,
Mhm.
after I read his book. But I still think if I went back and reread it, it would have things that I still wrestle with, even with him, in his presentation. So anyway, sorry that was long, but
No, no, it's really interesting. So, a couple of things. First of all, yeah, I don't have the final word on this deep, complex, interesting, never-ending source of mystery that took place, on Golgotha a couple of thousand years
mm-hmm,
ago.
mm-hmm,
So, I wouldn't want to say that. Secondly, as we've already said, what I think is my best approach is to try to view all of that through the lens of love. So I'm trying to think in terms of uncontrolling, non-binary, non-violent, non-scapegoating energy in relationship with God and others, meant for the non-complete flourishing of everyone and everything. Like all of that then kind of influences how I look at it, which is where I kind of go in this little book because I get to At-One-Ment, which is not an original phrase with me. I don't know who originally came up with that. Probably someone like Richard Rohr or someone of that ilk. Um, and I'm trying to be honest about that thing colors it. I will also say it's interesting. It's very interesting to hear you talk about, that book because I was thinking as you were talking, I started to think about all the talk about inciting incidents. So that was an inciting incident for you in the context of atonement.
mm-hmm.
For me, in the context of atonement, it'll be fun. I wonder what'll happen in the dimension beyond this dimension if we exist, and if we do, what kind of access we'll have. Like, will we have like celestial DVRs or something? Because it would be fun to go back and to sit down with an angel or God or somebody and connect a bunch of the dots that started happening, like stars now in the night sky, creating a constellation that then started to guide the way that I began to navigate through life. Because I know at times it would have been like reading a Rich Mullins book or a Henry Nouwen book, um, or a Howard Thurman book. Howard Thurman was a gateway process
Yeah,
open and
for
relational
sure.
guy, even though he doesn't use that language.
Yeah.
And
Abraham
then,
Joshua Heschel was for me
oh my
too.
word, absolutely.
He
Heschel's,
talks about anger and
yeah.
wrath in the heart of God, and it's really interesting to hear
I'll
He's a
tell you,
processed Jewish guy too, so.
reading Dostoevsky, like that sounds like I'm not even trying to be like intellectual and smart, but I read that and I can remember where I was. It was 2007. I was in our bedroom. I closed the last book of Brothers Karamazov, and I had the same feeling closing that last page of that book that I had looking at the Grand Canyon. Like,
Mm.
oh my God, something, God, it almost makes me tear up right. It does make me tear up right now, but I don't want to cry on your podcast. So, those things and music for me has been incredibly important. And even things like I remember getting with the worship team when this was really before the theology started to change. It became an inciting incident to me when we sang songs like "How Deep the Father's Love for Us," and there's a line in there. The Father turned his back, and it's back to your Colossians that you referenced earlier.
Mm.
God is in Christ
Right.
reconciling the world. He's not in the world reconciling Christ. When you think about that, that changes everything. And
Hmm.
it was even little conversations like that where I started to feel this was before I had a, a healthier understanding of all of this. It didn't sit right with me. So anyhow, I find that interesting. There's probably 100 or 1,000 different things that take place that wind up affecting how you look at this. And the last thing I'll say, because I don't even remember what your question was now, but the last thing I say is I 100% agree with what you're saying in terms of I do think it's probably true for most of Americanized Christianity. It certainly was true in my context that the atonement thing, I talk about it, I reference it. I can't remember if I put it in the book or not, but I reference it as the continental divide of the whole thing. So previous to me making some of these decisions and commitments, the rain fell and everything went, I don't know which direction, either west or east. After I made this commitment to love, everything's going the opposite direction. And it's the same brain, it's the same stuff, but now it's just falling and it's all just going, it's really close. Like it could just be a half an inch or, a millimeter or something go west or east. But now I'm directing everything to go the other way. And I can genuinely say theologically, it was the most important decision I ever made. And the decision was God does not need sacrifice in order to forgive.
Yep.
God just can forgive, just like any of us can.
Mm.
Now, it costs God something and it costs us something, but he or she didn't need for blood to be shed. And if they did, then wow, it's a gross, gross religion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the idea that God would have to kill somebody innocent to
Yeah,
forgive anybody,
to kill
is
anyone, let
to
alone
kill
someone innocent.
anybody.
We
But
don't
yeah,
even do that in our own society. Like
right.
our own society, we wouldn't do that. Why would we then superimpose that upon the divine?
Yes.
It's it just goes to show how stunted we are
Hmm.
in this whole thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I take it back to how do we forgive?
Mm,
And, in like there, in some way, we have to, you could say, hold the hurt. If somebody hurts us and we forgive,
hmm
we're absorbing or holding that
hmm
hurt. We're processing it,
Yep.
and then we're letting it go.
Yep.
And we're not gonna go for revenge or any of the other options except just to let it go and move on. And there is a cost to that, right?
Yep.
Um, and I think in some ways at the cross there is that God holding and suffering with all of humanity, that it is a costly thing to do, to stand in that place and hold all of that. I don't, but we do that when we forgive too. And I
hmm
think we're most like God probably when we do that. Stand with, hold, and suffer with, and then let go and forgive and choose love over hatred
Yes.
and the endless
Yes.
cycle of retaliation and all that kind of stuff.
It's a free thing, but it'll cost you everything. It's free, but it'll cost you. I frequently, I don't think I go through a day or two without thinking, and this probably is a Richard Rohr thing, or at least where I read it from him. The idea that when Christ is on the cross, arms outstretched, he's not there to fix the world. He's there to hold all things together.
Mm.
That's a little bit of non-complete flourishing too, like because
It,
God's not fixing it, he's holding it.
hmm
And you just said it, I think, really well. Like, okay, so where does the pain go? Where does the because it's real hurt. You've been hurt.
hmm
Where does it go? Well, it goes inward, and then you just have to absorb it, and it costs you something. And there's a real commitment for Christ followers. I think that's like the bulk of what we're doing. We're helping the world process all of this pain. And I think there's a way to see evolution and all that, by the way, and entropy and life and death and resurrection and complexification, taking this agitation in us as Christ did on the cross. And somehow, and that's the mystery, it is letting go, but also some of it is like, oh my God, it just gets metabolized into our bodies. And then maybe we, as the body moves stuff out, maybe we, if we're doing it in a healthy way, we're bringing it in and
Yeah.
moving it out.
It's like
That's the,
processing trauma to some degree.
yeah, yeah.
However deep the trauma, there's degrees of trauma, right? But
hmm Yeah. So
it's,
it's no small thing. It's a big thing. And I think all of that, yeah, is very instructive and informative in terms of maybe what's going on with At-One-Ment.
on page 38 and 39
I love page 38 and 39.
of your book. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Don't,
I don't know what it says.
yeah. Yeah. Like every good author, they don't know what's on every page. So, but us readers, we do. We know your
Mm,
pages, Jonathan.
mm,
Yeah. So, page 38, 39.
yeah.
What takes place at the cross is a nonlinear prism of truth.
Mm,
And then you have, well, 2.5 pages into page 40 of bullet points of what takes place at the cross is a nonlinear prism of truth. Bullet point 1, the truth that God is at one with our suffering.
mm,
Point 2, truth that love, for I don't know how else to think of God other than love, contains something deep and wounded within itself. I can't explain that here, but I invite you to read my book, Indigo, The Color of Grief, or listen to an episode called Cheese in the Darkness from the Jonathan Foster podcast that with underscored. The truth that love is vulnerable and cannot single-handedly control. The truth that violence and entropy is reality. So you just start, I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's that lens of love that you're beginning to reinterpret or re-understand even for yourself and then sharing it with others. Well, what could be going on at the
mhm,
cross?
mhm.
What
Yeah.
I don't want to read through all your bullet points, but I loved the path that you walked down with those bullet points. It was really good.
Thank you. Right. So a couple
The
of things.
truth that
First,
God was at one with Jesus. The truth
mhm,
that Jesus is innocent and at one with all victims everywhere. You
mhm,
you keep driving that at-one-ment
mhm.
home. Let's talk about the heart of that at-one-ment.
Yeah. So I was going to say, first of all, I talk about truth, and I was thinking again as you read it, truth isn't just a list of propositions. We get that wrong
Yeah.
with religion sometimes. Propositions play a part. You never gonna, you have to have systems, you have to have structure, and in order to have that, you got to have things you kind of land on. But there's the proposition part, but it has to be lived out in relationship. And I think this is what Jesus was getting at too when he talks about, when he quotes, who's he quote? Hosea, I desire mercy, not sacrifice.
And
It's
Amos and Isaiah
Yeah,
and
yeah, right, true.
books.
All the prophets
Mm.
really, the text plays a role, but at the end of the day, if it becomes more important than the person, And we see this play out. We're seeing it play out across our country right now with just the insane, absurd, violent way that the government has, drawn hard and fast lines around certain texts. So that whole truth thing is really interesting to me. And then, yes, I'm trying to really kind of what I was doing here is trying to figure out how many different ways to look at what happens at the cross and keep this at-one-ment thing at play. Because I think the reality is telling us that everything is interconnected. And in some ways, there's a way to say that anytime you're interacting with anything, but let's just keep it, I guess, at religion. Anytime you're interacting with a religion that's trying to separate and trying to suggest that this thing has no bearing on this thing, you're you're out of reality. And I think at the very least, Christians would want to be realistic, would want to be living in reality. Everything is entangled and interactive. Our best scientists have been telling this for at least 100 years, since at least the dawn of quantum mechanics. Not that I'm an expert in that, but there's no reason to try to suggest that there's something like a divine that is completely static and separate from it. In fact, I think it does us harm. So what I'm doing with my whole at-one-ment thing is just trying to play with all the different ways. Oh yeah, Christ is at one with those who suffer. I think that's biblical, and I think it's reflective of love. God's at one with Christ. It's biblical, reflective of love. I am at one with those who murdered Christ. That's biblical, reflective of love. All the way through death and then the resurrection piece. Now Jesus is showing back up, not in battle fatigues. He's showing up as a gardener, and he's not coming back with vengeance. He's coming back with forgiveness. And so the call, the invitation for us then, if we're Christ followers, is to be at one with that way of interacting with the world instead of trying to be at one with something that's ignoring the reality that we're actually all connected. So yeah, it was just kind of an imaginative way that I think is still biblical, and it's definitely reflective of my idea of love, of everything being connected to everything else.
Mm.
At-one-ment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think I was taught early on by my Southern Baptist upbringing to I was taught a heavy Calvinist version of things where total depravity that was
Mm-hmm.
beat pretty hard. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're dirty, rotten sinners, and, all of us deserve an eternal separation from God and hell kind of a thing. And, but for the grace of God, and, and so one of the things I've re-examined is my own theology of separation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I actually kind of rejected that theology for original blessing, Genesis
Mm-hmm.
1, 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then even Genesis 3 isn't who's separating. It's Adam and Eve. It's not God. God's not separated. God's hunting them down. God's
Right.
looking for them. So it's shame and guilt on our part that separate us. And I think unfortunately the church for centuries has capitalized on separation theology to create guilt and shame, to create separation, to create control, to be the only you got to believe exactly what we teach about this, and this to ever even enter heaven, kind of. So it's almost been like a way to control humanity
Mm-hmm.
um, with separation theology. I really don't think we're ever separated from God. God's always at love every moment and entangled with everyone,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Yep.
We can
That's
get minute. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that's not to say that there aren't feelings
Of
um,
separation.
of separation, and it doesn't feel like a very strong way of saying it, but uh, I mean, when Jesus is on the cross, I mean, his last words, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Hmm.
What I would want to say, I don't think God forsook him. I think God was even there, but it was the HOLE inside the WHOLE. It speaks
Hmm.
to the deep mystery of the woundedness of love, how it shows up, and it's already in my thinking, it's already got so much risk that sometimes things just rip apart. But God's in the ripping as well. God's not the one doing the ripping apart, but is in the midst of that. And so Jesus felt that, which is a strange sense of comfort for me. Uh, I've had a lot of seasons of my life, and actually that now have stretched into years of my life, where I've felt the truth of that part of the Jesus story more than a lot of the other part.
Me too.
So it's not to say, because I definitely have pushback from people on that, like the separation thing. Yeah, it still plays a role, but I think like what you were saying, it's more something we created. We feel it existentially, and then we've allowed it to grow into religions. And of course, Girard is informative here with scapegoating and those, and
Hmm.
a scapegoating mechanism that really essentially becomes our religion. And then we feed that beast, and that becomes, I think it becomes a false god. And then we leverage the fear in it because it's the best way to make payroll. It's the best way to get people to give, to pay our preachers and pastors and theologians. And when you start to deconstruct, like you and I have done, and certainly with me, I kept telling the Church of the Nazarene, it's really because I wound up, sorry, I'll just make this one point and then we'll pull it back in. I wound up getting uninvited from the tribe because of ostensibly over my views regarding LGBTQ people. And I was saying, no, they're not disconnected. Back to our part about it's not separate. They're all a part of this. And God loves them every bit as much as the heterosexual, as if the heterosexual has got all of his crap figured out. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. But really, what I was saying was, no, it goes deeper than that. Like our where we're really diverging is around this atonement stuff. It's around this
Mm.
love is accepting and holding all things and not trying to fix it. So I can't remember what point I was going to make, but what you're saying really just got my imagination going. It's really, really important.
Yeah, I think there's the existential. Like I felt separated from even myself in my darkest
Oh my word.
moment.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it
I
too.
mean, like I felt lost. Like I'd
Absolutely.
tried to win lost people to Christ my whole life and done that by the thousands.
Right.
You know, and then I was like, I'm I
Yeah.
was I was felt lost, like
Well, yeah,
lost.
because your
Like
sense of identity was built in
yeah.
part around that thing and lots of other things too. Me too. Like even losing a family member, a loved one, which we've done a lot of, like those people constituted who I am. Now they're not here. I feel deeply, like at a cellular level, like, and actually, I think that's true. Our cells are affected and changed by these things.
Hmm.
So it doesn't mean you're not going to feel separation or that separation doesn't play a role,
Right.
but it's how we treat it and how we assign it, to the divine that it starts to get, I started to say immoral and wrong. I think so, immoral. And it's really, really important. And I really kind of think that the hope of humanity, like if we get a chance to evolve beyond our our current states of existential angst and fear and just be able to breathe and live in the future, I think we'll have a lot to do with creating religions that can help us hold all the tension.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
gosh.
and I did 2 years of training with Buddhism and
Mm,
mindful meditation, and heard a lot of talks, and they definitely emphasize compassion and holding everything and letting everything go and not clinging and
mhm,
not pushing away, but
mhm,
saying yes to reality is a big thing. You hear about compassion in Buddhist teaching, but when it comes to like a response to injustice and evil, there's a little there's a bit of a different take in Buddhism
Mhm.
when it comes to, and so it's interesting that my Jewish friend like Abraham Joshua Heschel, because of the theme of justice and injustice, what is evil, and what is, and grappling with those things, that they, even Abraham Joshua Heschel would still allow for God to have a momentary feeling of anger, sadness, or hurt because of what his kids have done to each other. Her kids, its kids, you know, our kids have done to each other, and there's a grieving. Can be
Mhm.
even an anger, but it's for a moment. But love lasts forever. Kind of. This is how Heschel would
Yeah.
kind of talk about it. Love always wins.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love your thoughts.
Thank you.
Um, Thanks for sharing. What's going to be next in your series?
Yeah. So the microtheology series was the idea, especially in open and relational theology, but it's I think we just got to do whatever we can do to try to make things palatable and easy for people to read. And so the first four are about atonement, eschatology, sexuality, and uh I can't remember what the other one is. It'll come to me. They're all important, really deep, substantive things, but the idea was let's just do it in a Substack size post, which they're all about 10,000 words, and so that people can still get at the heart of kind of what's going on without having to read a 300-page thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what's next is probably actually interesting that you would ask this because I got a chance to speak at your church a few months ago, and you asked me to do something around parables, and I've been writing some stuff around parables that I think could be the next two or three additions to this book or to this series.
Hmm.
So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you for being on our spirituality adventures again. Thanks for, um, yeah. And oh, by the way, uh, we're going to be getting started in Kansas City. For those who are in Kansas City, we're going to try to stick with the second Monday night of the month. We were going to start in February, but then we had one of our guests had to back out here at the last
Just
minute.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Um, but our plan is to, the second Monday night in Kansas City at Greenwood Social Hall, to begin a, a theological conversations at Greenwood Social Hall around a lot of these kind of topics that you're dealing with. And
Yeah.
yeah, so for those in Kansas City, stay tuned. Check out
Yep.
Jonathan and I's Facebooks or Instagrams, and we'll be advertising it, and would love to see you come out for that.
Yep.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate you and your friendship and the work you're doing. Also, by the way, why don't you plug your new, for any pastors that might tune in? What's your new?
I got
Uh,
too many things
I
to
know, but
doing.
your new
So
network,
my
your new network.
That's right. Newest thing. It's actually been around for a couple years, but it's just the last 120 days where it's really kind of we've decided to officially give it some energy. We're building a new denominational ecosystem. It's called the Curian Network. So if you go to the Curian.network, that's Curian, the Curian Network, you'll find out about how we're licensing, credentialing, and endorsing pastors and chaplains, spiritual directors, professors, theologians, and we're trying to build a denominational ecosystem around uncontrolling love.
Mm, yes, I like it.
I know it sounds
I
awesome.
like it.
It's a little overwhelming, and there's some really, really good things are happening, but it's gonna be fun.
Curian.
The
Okay.
Curian.
Yeah. You gonna let people be duly aligned?
Yes,
Oh,
reciprocity, duly
nice.
aligned.
There we
That's
go.
definitely already happening. We already have churches that are, I mean, actually, technically, right now we only have one church, but um, we'll have more churches. Yeah, it's really, really cool. There's a lot of work to be done, and we're behind the eight ball, so to speak, because so many pastors, chaplains, theologians, thinkers are, in really difficult spots in our world. And so we're trying to provide mental health and theological health and help grow them and empower them in local missional settings rather than force them, to adhere to some global conformity around things that really don't have anything to do with love and have everything to do with bureaucracy and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a challenging thing, but it'll be fun.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Love all
Thank
the
you.
work you're doing. And folks, you can just go to Amazon and type in Jonathan Foster, Jonathan J. Foster, and find all of his books, including this new one and this whole new series. So check it out. And thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Peace, everyone.
Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.